I'm sure a majority of you growing up at some point in time played a Pokemon game. That memory you have of exploring the map for the first time, choosing your starter Pokemon, and filling out your Pokedex is a core memory for many like myself. As I began to age over time, this formula did run its course, and a majority of gamers realized this, and Game Freak, seizing the moment to print money hand over fist, didn't change a damn thing about the Pokemon formula, and in 2023, we got arguably one of the most broken and buggy looking Pokemon games in Scarlet and Violet. January 19th, 2024. Enter Palworld.
もう死んでいる。何？もうあたくびでギゼブ。
Where the hell did this game come from? Palworld is a game that you have probably heard plenty of by now, having reached over 2 million concurrent players on Steam, while also simultaneously launching on Game Pass, which makes that concurrent player number even more batshit crazy because the number is just from Steam alone. This game can be boiled down to a lot of things. An open world survival sandbox game where you capture pals that you train and upgrade, or you can put them to work at your base producing various materials that you can turn around and use to improve the pals or yourself. Another way to describe this game and how I would introduce it to the general audience is Pokemon with guns. Palworld is in early access, but already feels like it has more sauce than the most recent Pokemon entries. While this game does lack a linear story that is told to you, it is in early access, like I said before, but there is a skeletal framework with nuggets of lore sprinkled around the map, accompanied by journal entries that you can locate across different points. So if you're looking at this from a story perspective, this probably isn't going to be what draws you in. That comes down to the catching and crafting. So much of Palworld is derived from other game systems, but somehow all of those systems like base building, crafting, and catching all work so damn well when packaged together. Capturing pals, which are this game's version of Pokemon, will require you to either find or unlock pal spheres. That's right, pal spheres, not Pokeballs, but pal spheres. Capturing them is super simple as withering them down with your bow or axe, and then throwing one of your spears to have a chance at catching it. The lower the pal's health, the higher the chance that you have. Catching my drift here? There is a pal deck, just like the Pokedex from Pokemon, and it categorizes all the pals that you will see in the wild and assign them a number in the pal deck. Certain pals also have different locations that they will spawn in depending on the time of day, so that is something to keep in mind when out trying to capture some of these pals. From here, you can either train them to be a pal you carry around with you in the wild, or you can have them stay back home at the base. If you played any survival game, you know that one of the driving forces to keep you playing, at least in my eyes, is upgrading and building up your base, which is something the game has you do as part of the tutorial. Your base is used as a place for your pals to roam and relax in one of the many hot tubs, or harvesting and producing materials at stations you can set up around the area. Now this is one of my bases that you're looking at right now. I built it pretty close to the starting area, but found that area to be flat enough and give me enough room to build out comfortably. One thing I would recommend not doing is putting the box so close to the wall, because if you do so, the pals, when you spawn in or swap to a new one, will then get stuck in the wall because it kind of puts them behind the box, and this will then require you to pick them back up to get them on the right path. The task that the pals can do is actually kind of wild, from carrying, mining, logging, harvesting, creating materials, ammo, guns, anything you need, they can make it. That is in the later parts of the game because a majority of the farming early on is going to be manually done. And then, like I said, you'll get to a part where eventually the pals will be doing a lot of the work on their own.
It can't be stopped. It's self-sustaining now.
Building up my base has been something that I've already sunk a ridiculous amount of time into, and I can see that time growing as I unlock more and more with each level. Right now, the level cap is at 50, and that is the max level for any of the pals that you will see roaming around the map. That is also the main level for any pals that are going to be in your inventory. Now, you will need to level up a little bit more if you want to start going out to the corners of the map versus where you started at the beginning of your journey. There are boss towers that you can go to, and these offer up a pretty good challenge. There are 5 major towers in total around the map to do, with the first one being the last step in the tutorial for most people. There are also these little dungeons that you can go through, allowing you to clear out rooms of enemies. These dungeons also are usually filled to the brim with resources and pals that you can catch, with a bigger boss pal at the end of each dungeon. World bosses are also a thing that you can locate on the map, and these have a specific icon. This icon also tells you the level, and I would just take a peek at that before you go in guns blazing, because sometimes you might get mopped up. I've already put in 35 hours worth of playtime, and something about the loop of going out, catching new pals, and seeing which one of them can increase the base production, or mine or better, all these factors make going out and scavenging a little more exciting, and I still sometimes get surprised by some of the new pal designs that I see. I know there have been some accusations of plagiarism or possible use of AI generated pals in the game, but at the time of this preview, it's a lot of hearsay with not much to back it up or disprove those statements. When you look at a lot of the pals, you're going to notice a lot of similarities to Pokemon that you might know. While I'm not a lawyer, I don't think that Nintendo will sue them, or at least it doesn't look like that right now. Sure, a lot of the designs are similar. I've seen a lot of people point to Lamball or Totally Not Lucario here, because those are skirting the line, but Nintendo doesn't own the copyright to how a sheep looks. It's all left up to hearsay. Undoubtedly, the designs of the pals are inspired or at least derived from Pokemon that we know and love, but the same could be said for Digimon or Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest being the inspiration for a lot of the Pokemon designs. Nintendo are known for being ruthless when it comes to lawyers and copyright infringement, and Palworld had its first trailer some 2.5 years ago, so you'd have to imagine they'd caught wind or had seen it beforehand and deemed it a non-issue or passed it as a cheap knockoff. But after this record-breaking week, they might be rethinking that strategy.
You're wearing a cape. You're just a cheap fucking knockoff.
Oh, no.
I'm the upgrade.
Sitting at level 35, I'm starting to see what the endgame grind of Palworld is shaping up to be, at least in the early stages. Once you clear out those first few towers, you're going to need to level up a lot to be able to move on to one of the other 3 regions that this game has to offer. I'm going to put up the map here on screen for anyone that wants a reference. And when I first saw this map, I was not expecting it to be as large, with each island having sort of a different environment to explore, which will also require special gear. One of the biggest recommendations I would give you is early on to catch as many pals as you can until you reach or have caught 10 of the same kind. XP gains that you get from these are much greater than catching ones that you already have 10 of. Boss towers are also a great source of leveling, as those do respawn once cleared and are not on a timer like the bosses in dungeons that you find in the open world. So if you have a good setup of pals, you could run that tower over and over again, farming up that XP. There is even a bug that is currently going around that allows you to capture the bosses in the towers, but it requires you to obtain a wanted level and go into the boss tower, have the person that chases you into the tower shoot the boss. Not sure how it works or why it works, but take advantage of it while you can, because it doesn't seem to be intended. The developer Pocket Pair also released a roadmap for the game, thanking everyone for the support and also giving a little bit of insight on what they plan on doing with the game moving forward. With talks of PvP for your actual pals, there's a whole lot that they've got planned here. I'm just excited to see what they do moving forward after this monumental launch. So normally I do the technical block at the start, but I wanted to slide this in on the back half because the game is in early access. So I think that comes with a little bit of expectation that it was going to be buggy and have some issues. Performance has been a little over the place, I'd say, in the first week, but I want to note that the Game Pass version that I am playing is behind the wide release Steam version that a lot of people have access to. So it could be possible that the performances do vary based on what version you are playing. Currently, the biggest issue that plagues me in Palworld is when I'm trying to play in a multiplayer server, loading in will crash the game, and the only solution at this time that I've been able to find out is to load in solo without multiplayer on, fast travel to a different base I have, log out of the game, and then turn multiplayer back on. It's really annoying, but it works, and usually only is required on a hard crash or if you're first starting the game up for a day. Like I said before, the pathing of some of the pals also needs a little bit of work, as they don't take the most appropriate route at times to your materials or your workstations, which does decrease the efficiency. Not to mention, like I said, they get stuck all the time, whether that be in a wall or a tree. Thankfully though, this next bug though is not as frustrating and can help you with a little bit of movement around the map. When you're attempting to catch a pal with a sphere, you can climb on top of the ball. Once it reaches 100% completion, it will send your character flying into the air. So as you can see, there are some good and there are some bad bugs in Palworld, but considering the game isn't even a week old, I think we can cut them some slack if it does take them a little bit of time to fix them. Every so often, a game comes along and takes the internet and world by storm. Sometimes you can see them coming, other times, like here with Palworld, it's completely out of left field and not something that anyone, myself included, could have expected. The longevity of this game is yet to be seen, but with over 7 million copies of this game sold in its first 5 days alone, Slight update, while I was editing this video, they sold 8 million copies now in their first 6 days. And the inclusion of the game being available on Xbox and PC Game Pass, the number of concurrent players is much higher. A week ago, no one knew what this game was or looked at it as just a joke. Now, Palworld, at the time of writing this script, sits at the second highest concurrent player count for any game on Steam, surpassing the likes of Cyberpunk, Dota, Hogwarts Legacy, and CSGO 2. I think it's only January and we have already had one of, if not the biggest surprises of the year roll around, and it's been a lot of fun to play and experience this game during it all. It's also been interesting to see the discourse surrounding the game, and on one hand, you have the diehard Nintendo fans that are saying it's a direct ripoff of Pokemon. While I'm not arguing against that, then you have the other crowd of people who have been begging Game Freak and Nintendo to innovate and put at least a little bit of effort into the Pokemon series. In the end, if you're having fun with the game, that's really all that matters. I would consider myself one of those people. I see myself playing this game easily for the next week or so until Suicide Squad drops, coming back also when they update the game a little more. That about wraps it up here for me. I'm going to get back to grinding and catching me some pals. So if you did make it this far, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time out of your day. And this has been my preview of Palworld. Thank you for watching.